I was not looking for trouble. That is the cruel irony of it all. It started with something simple, me lounging on the couch, scrolling through my phone on a quiet Saturday evening. The rain was tapping against the window, a steady rhythm that made the world outside feel smaller. I had just cracked open a cold beer, ready to unwind after a long work week, flipping past pictures of cookouts, family vacations, and people pretending their lives were perfect. Then I saw it. A photo, buried among the usual nonsense, posted by one of those people I barely remember adding. A mutual friend, someone I had not talked to in years. The picture was taken at a familiar spot, a little coffee shop downtown, with faded brick walls and dim lighting. I knew the place well. I had suggested it for one of our date nights a while back, but my wife, Rachel, brushed it off, saying it had changed too much, that she did not like the crowd anymore. But there she was. Rachel sat at a small table near the corner, her auburn hair tucked behind her ear, that old green sweater draped over her shoulders, the one she called her lucky charm. And she was laughing, her head tilted just slightly, leaning in toward the man sitting next to her. My stomach tightened as I zoomed in, my thumb shaking against the glass screen. The man beside her was not just anyone. I recognized him, even though it had been years since I had last seen his face. His jawline was sharp, his smile easy, too familiar. It was Josh, her ex-boyfriend. The one she had told me was just a part of the past. I sat there, frozen, staring at the screen, trying to make sense of what I was looking at. She had not mentioned running into him. She had not mentioned going to that coffee shop. She had not mentioned any of it. The easy explanation would be that it was just a friendly catch-up, that she had bumped into him and decided to sit down for a quick chat. But the way she looked at him in that photo, the way her body leaned ever so slightly toward him, it did not look like a casual run-in. It looked like something else entirely. I wanted to tell myself it was nothing. I wanted to close my phone, finish my beer, and go back to my peaceful evening. But I could not. I placed my phone face down on the coffee table and ran a hand through my hair. My heartbeat drummed against my ribs, steady but heavy. Rachel had told me she was going out for dinner with a friend. She had left the house in a rush, kissed me goodbye without much thought, and promised she would not be too late. I had not asked which friend, but now I wished I had. The thought of her sitting across from him all evening, laughing, reminiscing, maybe even touching his arm the way she used to do with me. It made my fists clench. I checked the clock. She would be home soon. I had no idea what I was going to say when she walked through that door, but I knew one thing for sure. I was not just going to let this slide. I was not going to sit in the dark and pretend I had not seen what I had seen. I picked up my phone again, staring at the picture, studying every little detail as if it held all the answers I needed. Her smile, his stare, the way she looked at him like she had not looked at me in a long time. Then I heard it, the soft clink of keys against the front door. I turned my head, watching as Rachel stepped inside. She shook the rain from her coat, her face relaxed, oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. She set her purse down on the counter, smiled, and greeted me the same way she always did, like nothing was out of the ordinary. "Hey," she said, tucking a damp strand of hair behind her ear. I did not respond. I watched her closely, waiting for something, guilt, hesitation, anything, to flicker across her face. But there was nothing. She moved through the room like everything was perfectly fine. I almost second-guessed myself. Almost. Then her phone buzzed in her pocket. She glanced at it quickly, her expression unreadable, before slipping it back without checking the message. And that was when I knew. She noticed me staring and tilted her head, smiling as if nothing was wrong. "What's up? You were just standing there like you have seen a ghost." She had no idea, but she was about to find out. "I could say the same about you," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. Rachel blinked, caught off guard. "What does that mean?" I did not answer right away. Instead, I grabbed my phone from the coffee table, unlocked it, and pulled up the picture. I turned the screen toward her, letting her see it for herself. Her smile disappeared instantly. Her posture stiffened, her hands gripping the edge of the counter like she needed something solid to hold on to. I watched her eyes flicker, first with shock, then with something colder. It was a split second, but I caught it. "Where did you get that?" she asked, her voice unnaturally steady. Social media, I said, tossing the phone back onto the table. Funny how things come back around when you least expect them. She exhaled slowly, crossing her arms over her chest like she was bracing herself. That was a couple of weeks ago, she said. Her tone was controlled now, like she had already rehearsed the answer. It is not what you think. Then tell me what it is, I demanded, stepping closer. She hesitated just for a second, a tiny flicker of uncertainty before she smoothed her face into something neutral. It was nothing, she said, shaking her head. I ran into him by accident. We had not seen each other in years, and we caught up over coffee. That is all. Just coffee, I repeated, my voice dripping with disbelief. And you expect me to buy that? It is the truth, she said, her voice rising. You are blowing this way out of proportion. Am I? I shot back. Because last time I checked, you told me you had not been to that place in years. You made it seem like you hated it. But there you were, sitting across from him, like it was the most natural thing in the world. She pressed her lips into a thin line, her silence louder than any excuse she could have given. I could see the wheels turning in her head, trying to figure out what version of the truth would be easiest to sell. I did not think it was important, she said finally, her voice softening like she thought she could smooth this over. It was just one conversation. We talked about old times, that was it. I did not want to upset you, so I did not bring it up. I let out a bitter laugh, shaking my head. You do not want to upset me? That is convenient. You lied, Rachel. Do not try to spin this like it was some noble attempt to protect my feelings. Her jaw tightened. I did not lie. I just did not think it mattered. It matters now, I said, my voice steady. And I do not believe for a second that this was just one innocent coffee date. So tell me the truth, all of it. She sighed, like she was exhausted by my questions, and pushed past me to the living room. She sat on the couch, rubbing her hands together like she was trying to warm them. She looked nervous for the first time, but I knew her too well to trust that reaction. Rachel was good at hiding things. Nothing is going on, she said flatly. You are making something out of nothing, and I am tired. I did not want to argue. I studied her, trying to recognize the woman I had spent years building a life with. I thought back to all the times she came home late, the texts she used to brush off, the little shifts in her behavior I had ignored because I had trusted her. Maybe I had been stupid to trust her so blindly. You do not want to argue, I repeated, shaking my head. That is convenient, too. She groaned, rubbing her temples. You are seeing something that is not there, and I do not know how to convince you otherwise. You do not need to convince me, I said, arms crossed, because I'm going to find out the truth whether you like it or not. Her eyes flicked up to meet mine, and for a brief second I saw something close to fear. Not the fear of being wrongly accused, but the fear of being caught. The silence stretched between us like a rubber band pulled too tight. I could feel something coming, something just on the edge of breaking. Fine, she finally muttered, sinking deeper into the couch cushions. Her fingers twisted together, knuckles whitening. You want the truth? Here it is. There is no truth. It was coffee. That is all. I laughed again, that same humorless sound that tasted like regret. You expect me to believe that? After everything? You told me you were not in contact with him. You told me you had not seen him in years. And now I find out you have been meeting up with him, having casual little conversations. She hesitated, just a breath, just a beat too long. It was small, but I caught it. You did not run into him by accident, did you? I pressed. She looked away, her gaze darting toward the window like she wanted to escape. I did not plan it, she whispered. He reached out to me first. Messaged me on social media a few months ago. I did not think it was a big deal. We just talked. A few months ago. My stomach twisted at the timeline. While I was at work, while I was making plans for us, while I was doing everything to keep our marriage strong, she was rekindling something with the man she used to love. And you did not think to mention that to me? My voice was steady, but I could feel the anger boiling just beneath the surface. She exhaled sharply. I did not think it mattered. It was harmless. Harmless. I repeated, tasting the word like poison. You are telling me that keeping secrets, meeting up behind my back, and lying about where you have been is harmless? She pushed herself up from the couch, walking over to the fireplace, her back turned to me. The glow from the lamp cast a shadow across her shoulders. I did not lie, she said quietly. I just did not tell you everything. I stepped forward, closing the space between us. That is the same thing, Rachel. You think because you left out the details, it is not betrayal. She turned suddenly, fire flashing in her eyes. I'm not cheating on you, she snapped. Is that what you want to hear? That I am sneaking around, having some affair? Well, I'm not. I should not have met up with him, but it does not mean what you think it does. I stared at her, searching for the truth in her face. I wanted to believe her. I really did, but I could not. Not anymore. Why him? I asked, my voice quieter now, but no less firm. Out of all the people in the world, why the one you swore you were done with? She swallowed hard, and I could see her struggling to come up with the right answer. But there was no right answer, not one that would make any of this okay. Because it was familiar, she finally admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Because we have history. Because I guess I knew he would understand certain things about me without me having to explain. I stared at her, feeling something inside me crack. Certain things? Like what? Things you couldn't talk to me about? She shook her head quickly. No, it's not like that. Then what is it like, Rachel? I demanded. Because from where I'm standing, it sure as hell looks like you've been sneaking around behind my back with someone you swore was in the past. She took a deep breath, bracing herself. It was not sneaking around. It was just catching up. I let out a bitter laugh. Catching up? That is what you were calling it. Months of conversations, meeting up in secret, texting late at night? That is just catching up? She flinched. She had nothing to say because she knew I was right. I took a step back, shaking my head. Does he want you back? She hesitated, just for a second, but I caught it. I do not know, she finally admitted. Maybe, but I told him that is not happening. I told him I am married. I told him I love you. The words stung more than they should have. You told him? That makes it sound like he was under the impression something might happen. Her face paled. That is not. And you love me? I interrupted, my voice tight. Because love does not feel like this, Rachel. Love does not feel like wondering if my wife is lying to me every time she leaves the house. Love does not feel like finding out from someone else that you are having lunch with your ex. She opened her mouth to respond, but before she could, her phone buzzed on the table between us. The sound cut through the air like a warning bell. Her eyes darted to it instinctively, and that was all I needed to see. Who is it? I asked, already knowing the answer. It is nothing, she said too quickly, her voice almost breathless. I reached for the phone before she could, grabbing it off the table and flipping it over. His name lit up the screen like a flashing neon sign. David. The name stared back at me, glowing against the dim light of the room. I did not even bother unlocking it. I did not need to. The fact that he was messaging her now, this late at night, said everything I needed to know. I tossed the phone onto the couch, my stomach twisting with disgust. The sound of it hitting the cushions felt louder than it should have. Still think it is harmless? I asked, my voice low and sharp. Rachel's breath hitched, and for the first time that night, I saw real cracks in her composure. Please, she whispered, do not do this. Do not turn this into something it is not. I let out a slow breath, try to steady myself. It already is something, I said, and I'm not stopping until I know exactly how far this went. She looked at me like she wanted to argue, like she wanted to keep up whatever acts she thought she could still sell. But she could not. She knew she had lost control of the situation. I did not sleep that night. How could I? Rachel had retreated to the bedroom hours ago, but I stayed downstairs, pacing, thinking, replaying our conversation over and over again. Her denials, her half-excuses, the way she looked at her phone before I even picked it up. The truth was right there, just out of reach, and I was not going to let her hide it any longer. By the time the clock hit 3 a.m., I had made up my mind. I needed more than just her weak explanations, I needed proof, I needed something undeniable. If she thought this was just going to go away, she was wrong. Her phone was still lying there on the couch where I had thrown it earlier. I sat down, staring at it, debating whether I should pick it up. I never thought I would be the kind of husband to go through his wife's phone. But then again, I never thought my wife would be the kind of woman who would lie to my face. That line, the one between trust and invasion, was already blurred the moment she chose to keep secrets from me. I reached forward, grabbing the phone. I hesitated for just a moment. Then I unlocked it, and what I found made my stomach drop. She didn't reach for the phone again. She knew better. Instead, she let out a shaky breath, pressing her fingers against the counter like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Just say it, I pushed. Tell me exactly what this is, Julia. No more dodging. No more excuses. Just the truth. She swallowed hard. Her eyes darted toward the window, like she was searching for an escape. There was none. Not this time. She stopped, biting her lip. You what? I snapped. You got caught? You were hoping I would never find out? Or were you planning to tell me eventually? Tears welled up in her eyes, but I didn't budge. I wasn't going to fall for it this time. Not after everything I had seen. It was not an affair, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I scoffed. Then what the hell do you call this? Two people sneaking around behind my back, meeting in coffee shops, sending each other messages about missing things, looking forward to the next time? Tell me, Julia, because from where I'm standing, it sure as hell looks like one. She flinched. I never slept with him. I let out a bitter laugh. Oh, well, that is great to hear. So I should just be grateful that you only emotionally betrayed me, right? She finally looked at me, her expression desperate. I was lonely, okay? I froze. Lonely? I repeated, my voice dangerously quiet. You were lonely? She nodded quickly, like she had just found her lifeline. Yes, you have been so distant lately, always buried in work, always tired. I felt forgotten. I clenched my jaw, and instead of talking to me, you decided to go looking for comfort in the arms of your ex. Her lip quivered, but she didn't deny it. You do not get to blame this on me, I said, stepping closer. I was working for us, for this home, for you. And instead of supporting me, instead of telling me how you felt, you ran straight to the past. She covered her mouth with her hand, and I could see the tears starting to fall. But I did not care. Not this time. You do not get to cry, I said coldly. You do not get to play the victim here, Julia. You knew exactly what you were doing. You lied to me for months. You had your messages. You met him in secret. And now, you expect me to feel sorry for you. She shook her head furiously. I did not mean for it to go this far. But it did. I shot back. You kept choosing him over and over again. Every time you texted him, every time you met up, you chose him. She let out a strangled sob. I did not want to hurt you. But you did, I said. And you knew you would. That is why you kept it a secret. That is why you lied. Silence. The weight of her betrayal sat heavy between us, thick as the air before a storm. I exhaled, running a hand over my face. My anger was still there, burning under my skin, but beneath it, something else was creeping in. Exhaustion. I was so tired of this. Tired of the lies. Tired of the doubt. Tired of wondering if the person I had spent years building a life with had ever truly been mine. I do not even know who you are anymore, I muttered. She took a shaky step toward me. Please do not say that. We can fix this. I held up a hand, stopping her in her tracks. No, you do not get to decide that. Her face crumpled. I love you. Yeah. I laughed bitterly. You have a funny way of showing it. I turned away from her, grabbing my jacket off the back of the chair. Where are you going? She asked, her voice panicked. I didn't look back. I need air. Please, she begged. Do not leave like this. I hesitated for half a second. Then I shook my head. You already left first, Julia. You just didn't bother telling me. And with that, I walked out the door, letting it slam shut behind me. The further I walked, the more I realized how little I actually knew about the woman I had been sharing my life with. I had spent years believing that we were solid, that no matter how difficult things got, we would face them together. But now, as I replayed every word, every lie, every careful omission, it was obvious I had been in this marriage alone for a long time. Julia might have convinced herself that a kiss was the worst of it, that I should be grateful she had stopped before things went further. But that was just her version of the truth, the one she had decided I could handle. And I was done letting her decide what I deserved to know. By the time I made it back to the house, the sun had fully risen, casting long shadows across the lawn. My hands were cold, my breath steady, but my mind was still a storm. I stepped inside, and there she was, sitting on the couch, knees pulled up to her chest, looking like she had been frozen in place since the moment I left. Her eyes lifted when she heard the door shut, wide and desperate. But I did not say anything. Did you? She hesitated, swallowing hard. Did you come back to talk? I shrugged off my jacket and tossed it over the chair. No, I came back because this is my house. Her face crumpled at my words, but I did not have the energy to soften them. I need to know everything, I said flatly. Every lie, every detail. And I'm telling you right now, Julia, if I catch you in one more lie, if I find out later that you held back anything, we are done. She wiped her nose with the sleeve of her sweater, nodding quickly. I told you everything. Try again. I sat down across from her, elbows on my knees, my gaze locked onto hers. You kissed him last week. Where? She hesitated, then whispered, his car. I let out a bitter laugh. So you had to go out of your way to make it happen. Great. Keep going. How often have you seen him? She wrung her hands together, staring at them like they might have the answers written across her palms. I do not know. Maybe 5 or 6 times over the past few months. I clenched my fists. And how many times did you almost sleep with him? Her head shot up, eyes wide. What? You heard me, I said, my voice cold. You do not just jump from harmless coffee dates to kissing in a car. There was a build-up, Julia, a progression. How far did it go before you decided to stop? She shook her head quickly. I swear, we never did anything else. I stared at her for a long moment, reading every twitch, every nervous swallow, every flicker of doubt in her expression. And you expect me to believe that? She sniffled. Yes. I let out a slow breath, running a hand over my face. Why should I? You've already lied to me about everything else. She looked away, biting her lip, her knee bouncing with nervous energy. Because even when I was lying, I still knew the line I wouldn't cross. I could not do that to you. I wanted to believe her, but I did not. Because people do not just stop. I leaned back against the chair, exhaustion settling into my bones. I want to see your phone. Her breath hitched. I told you everything. Then prove it. I held out my hand, palm up. If there is nothing else, if you're really done with him, let me see it. She hesitated. Too long. And there it was. The final nail in the coffin. I exhaled sharply, dropping my hand. You are still talking to him, aren't you? Not in that way. She rushed out. I told him we could not keep seeing each other, but what? I snapped. You still keep in touch. You still leave the door open just a little, just in case. She buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking. I did not know how to just cut him off completely. I needed time. I laughed, but it was hollow and humorless. You needed time? To do what? Figure out if he was worth throwing away our marriage for? No, she sobbed. I never wanted to lose you. But you did. Her breath caught in her throat as she looked up at me, eyes glassy and raw. What do you mean? I stood up, shoving my hands in my pockets to keep them from shaking. I'm done, Julia. She scrambled to her feet, reaching for me, but I stepped back before she could touch me. No, please, you do not mean that. We can fix this. I will delete everything. I will block him. I will do whatever you want. It is too late for that. But I love you, she whispered, voice breaking. I sighed, looking at her, really looking at her for what felt like the last time. If you loved me, you would not have done this. You would not have made me doubt every moment we ever shared. Tears streamed down her face, but I did not move. I did not break. I will get my things, I said simply. I will figure out where I am staying tonight. She grabbed my arm, holding on like she could physically stop me from leaving. Please, she begged, do not throw us away. I pulled away from her grasp, my voice quiet but firm. You already did. And with that, I walked upstairs to pack, knowing that when I left that house, I would never be coming back. Julia's breath hitched when she saw the message. Her eyes darted from the phone to me, wide and stricken with guilt. She didn't even try to grab it back this time. She knew she had lost. I clenched my jaw so hard my teeth ached. You told him it was over, I repeated, my voice shaking. Then why is he still waiting for you? She opened her mouth, but no words came out. I stood there, gripping the phone, my knuckles white. Go on, I said. I'm waiting. Explain it to me. Tell me how this is just another misunderstanding. Tell me how I'm overreacting again. She swallowed hard. shaking her head. I don't know why he sent that. You don't know. I let out a sharp, humorless laugh. So what? He's just delusional? Sitting around, imagining a future with you for no reason. Tears welled in her eyes, but I wasn't done. You told me you ended it, I said, stepping closer, my voice dropping to a deadly whisper. You swore to me that it was over, that I was the one you chose. But you lied. Again. She shook her head violently, her hands trembling. I swear, I didn't encourage him. I blocked him after our talk. I haven't responded. Then why does he still think there's a choice to be made? I demanded, cutting her off. Why does he think you're scared, but still considering it? Her shoulders slumped, and she buried her face in her hands. I don't know, she whispered, barely audible. You do know, I snapped. You just won't say it. Because saying it means admitting the truth, that you wanted him to wait for you. That a part of you wasn't ready to let him go. She let out a broken sob, shaking her head. No, that's not true. I turned the phone in my hands, staring at the message, the final nail in the coffin. I wasn't sure what hurt more, the betrayal itself or the fact that she had let me believe, even for a moment, that she had chosen me. You kept the door open, I said coldly. Even after everything, you still left the door open. She was full-on crying now, gasping between sobs. I never wanted to leave you, she choked out. I never planned to. I was afraid of closing it completely, of regretting it. But that doesn't mean I don't love you. I stared at her, feeling something inside me harden. You don't love me, I said, my voice flat. You love the idea of me. You love the security, the familiarity, the history. But you wanted him too. And the difference between us? I never once made you feel like you weren't enough. Her sobs quieted into soft, shuddering breaths. She looked up at me, desperate, pleading. Please don't do this, she whispered. Please don't walk away. But there was nothing left to hold on to. Nothing worth saving. I placed her phone back on a nightstand carefully, deliberately. Then I turned and walked toward the closet, grabbing the duffel bag from the top shelf. She shot up from the floor, rushing toward me. What are you doing? I didn't answer. I just started packing. No, she cried, grabbing my arm. You don't have to do this. We can fix this. I can fix this. I pulled away, meeting her frantic gaze with nothing but cold certainty. You can't fix something that was broken the moment you decided to hide him from me. She shook her head, her chest rising and falling rapidly. I made a mistake. I made a horrible mistake, but you can't just leave like this. Not over one mistake. I zipped up the bag and slung it over my shoulder. It wasn't one mistake, I said, my voice quieter now, but no less firm. It was every single choice you made after the first one. Every lie, every excuse, every time you let him think he had a chance. She reached for me again, but I stepped back. I can't stay here, I said simply. Not after this. Her lips trembled. Where will you go? I exhaled slowly. I don't know, but anywhere is better than here. She let out a small, broken sound, like the last breath of a dying thing. You're really leaving? I nodded. Yeah. Her arms wrapped around herself, her entire body shaking. I never wanted this, she whispered. I never wanted to lose you. But you did, I said, my hand on the doorknob now. And the worst part? You didn't even fight for us until you got caught. I turned the knob, pulling the door open. Cold air rushed in from the hallway. Goodbye, Julia, I said. And then, before she could say another word, before she could beg one last time, I stepped through the door and closed it behind me. I walked out of the house, out of the life I thought I had, and into the unknown. The night was cold, the air crisp against my skin, but for the first time in a long time, I felt something close to clarity. I did not know where I was going, but I knew I would never be coming back. The night air hit me like a slap, cold, biting, real. I had been suffocating in that house, drowning in the weight of her lies, and stepping outside felt like finally coming up for air. My feet carried me down the driveway, past the familiar sights of her quiet neighborhood, but I barely noticed any of it. My mind was too cluttered with everything Julia had just admitted. She had kept him as a backup. I had spent years thinking I was building a solid foundation with her, while she had been making sure there was an escape route, just in case. I walked aimlessly for a while, my breath fogging in the crisp air. The world felt too big, too open, and yet I felt caged inside my own thoughts. Every conversation we had ever had replayed in my head under a new light. Every time she had reassured me that I was enough, that she was happy, that we were okay. It had all been a lie. Or maybe not a lie, maybe just a gamble. She was waiting to see if I would let her down. I reached a small park at the end of our street, the same place where we used to sit and talk late into the night when we were younger. Back when I thought love was simple. I sat on one of the benches, elbows on my knees, staring at the darkened sky. What was I supposed to do now? I could leave. Every logical part of me screamed that I should. She had betrayed my trust in the worst way, not just with her actions, but with her intent. She had made a choice, over and over again, to keep him close, just in case. How do you come back from that? My phone buzzed in my pocket, jolting me from my thoughts. I pulled it out, expecting Julia, but it wasn't her. It was Kevin. Kevin, hey man, you good? I stared at the message for a moment. No, I wasn't good. Not even close. But I wasn't sure how to say that. I started typing, then erased it. I tried again. Me, I don't know. His reply came almost instantly. Kevin, do you need a place to crash? I exhaled slowly. That was Kevin for you. No fluff, no unnecessary questions. Just a solution. Me, yeah. That'd be good. Kevin, doors open. Take your time. I shoved my phone back into my pocket and stood up. If I stayed here, sitting on this bench, I'd spiral. I needed distance, space to breathe without the suffocating presence of Julia and her apologies. When I got back to the house, the lights were still on. I didn't want to go inside, but I had to. I needed clothes, my wallet, at least enough to get me through a few days. I hesitated before opening the door, preparing myself for whatever scene Julia would have waiting for me. When I stepped inside, she was still sitting at the kitchen table, her hands folded in her lap, her face pale and exhausted. She had been crying. I could tell by the redness around her eyes, but she didn't speak when she saw me. She just sat there, watching me as if she was afraid one wrong word would make me disappear for good. I walked past her without a word and headed upstairs. Where are you going? She finally asked, her voice small. Packing a bag, I said flatly. For how long? I zipped open the duffel bag on the bed and grabbed a handful of clothes from the dresser. I don't know. Please, she whispered, standing in the doorway now. Please don't leave like this. I didn't answer. I couldn't. If I turned to look at her, I wasn't sure if I'd scream or collapse. Talk to me, she begged. I stuffed more clothes into the bag, grabbed my phone charger, and slung the strap over my shoulder before finally looking at her. You don't get to ask me for anything right now, Julia, I said, my voice as tired as I felt. You had months to talk to me. You had months to come clean. You don't get to be the one who decides how this ends. Tears spilled down her cheeks again, but I felt nothing. I had run out of sympathy. I brushed past her, walked downstairs, and grabbed my keys from the counter. Do you still love me? She asked suddenly, her voice trembling. I stopped at the door, my hand resting on the handle. Love. That was the cruelest part, wasn't it? I did love her. Or at least I had. But love wasn't enough anymore. I don't know. I admitted, my voice raw. And then, before she could say anything else, I walked out. I didn't slam the door. I didn't need to. The silence was loud enough.